welcome back to the world's easiest wireframing crash course. Today we're going to talk about everything there is to know about wireframes, the art of wireframing, and we're going to end with making our very first wireframe in Excalidraw right here in this video. That's what we're doing today. Let's get started. The first question that is in everyone's minds: what is a wireframe? A wireframe is like a blueprint for a website or an app. It's the simple stripped down version of your design without specific brand colors, fancy fonts, or pixel perfect polish. It's just boxes, lines, and placeholders that shows what goes where and how it works. The point isn't to make it pretty, it's to make it clear what the user is going to go through while they make their journey through this website or app. A good wireframe answers a couple of questions, including what's on the page, where does each element go, and what can the user do here. And here's the good news: you don't need any complicated design software to start, so we're just going to use Excalidraw, which is just available in our browsers, and you can wireframe instantly for free on excalidraw.com. Let's talk about how to create an actual wireframe in Excalidraw. To get started, go to Google and search for Excalidraw. You're going to go to excalidraw.com, and all of the data that you make now is saved in this browser. Let's get started by creating a simple wireframe. So you just don't have to worry about all of the complicated things that are happening here. If you're not aware of how Excalidraw works, check out the world's easiest Excalidraw crash course for 2025 up here in the cards at the top. Or you can just get started because this is a beginner-friendly tutorial. So to get started with Excalidraw, you're just going to go to the top, create a rectangle, and this is going to now create a simple rectangle for you. You can choose the stroke color or you can choose the background as well. Let's keep this background white. You can also choose transparent, but I prefer white just because I have clarity in terms of the background that I'm working with. Alright, now that we have this background with us, let's create a simple navigation. So I want this navigation bar to be at the bottom. This is going to be a bottom navigation UI. Let's make sure we scale this up, make it bigger. So I feel like this is where a lot of the different things are going to happen in terms of the options available for this UI. So we're just going to change the color to a very rough shade of green. You can also make the fill hatched or cross hatched. I feel like simple fills are good for this one, so I'm just going to leave it at that. You can also change the sloppiness of the actual strokes for all of these rectangles and other shapes as well, and change the stroke style to dotted, dashed, or complete lines. You can also change the width of the stroke. I feel like this width is fine. Now we're going to add the place where our image is going to go. So I just don't want to add a real image right now. That would be too complicated. We're just going to place an example of an image here. So this is where our actual image in the UI is going to go. So let's just add that image right here, and now we're going to add a little bit of text. So to add text, you can add text if you want to, and these text options are actually quite nice in terms of the font families that we have. These are hand-drawn font families, which let me just show you what the text look like. So if you want to add some text, let's just add a little bit of text by clicking on the A button and then typing it out. You can change it a couple of ways. You can change the strokes color, you can change the font family to a hand-drawn feel, a very classic normal feel, a code-based feel, or you can change it to one of the fonts that are present over here. So you can just choose a bunch of these fonts: Excalifont, Lilita 1, and Unito. You can also search for fonts if you want to search over here. Alright, with that said, you can change the size of the fonts automatically, or you can change the alignment of the text, but this is actually going to be useful when you have a large chunk of text. You can change its opacity and also change its positioning as it relates to the different layers it's present in. Alright, but I just don't want to use this for my wireframes. I just prefer scribbling roughly where my text is going to go. So I'm just going to go over here and scribble out the title and where it's going to stay at. You can change the thickness for this as well. So we're just going to go inside, select this, go inside and send this guy to the back, go inside and send this guy to the back, send this guy to the back, and then we're going to easily select this scribble that we've just made. We're going to make this thinner, and once that is done, now I can just change it so it's just easier to work with visually. Alright, now that I have my title, I also would want to add some description over here. So I'm just going to leave a little bit of line spacing where it's supposed to go. I also feel like we'll have a little bit of a menu and a couple of buttons here, so I want to do that as well. Any menu has a couple of options and I'm sort of making space for that.
let's just change the sloppiness and also change the couple of colors that we're using over here. Again, a cool quality with Excalidraw is you can just copy any element by clicking on the copy button, and it'll automatically copy and paste it for you without pressing copy and paste separately. Also, if you choose a color from the strokes, and then if this is the first element in the second row, if you go to the backgrounds and choose the first element in the second row, the color that comes up will automatically match the strokes color in a very, very pretty way. So I'm a huge fan of that and had to give that a shout out. All right, we can just duplicate this once again, but Control-C, Control-V also works in Excalidraw perfectly. I feel like I want to add one more section, so we will just add that. And with that, we have our entire menu with us. I feel like I still need to do maybe one call to action button, and for that to happen, could just either shrink these guys down or add a button in the vertical. So those are both the options we can play around with. And this is where wireframing becomes very, very effective. Instead of creating real world high fidelity wireframes, I can physically now decide whether I want to make the slider for the other options thinner as an option, or if I want to let this be as thick as possible, and then the remaining button that I have to make, which is separate from this slider, can just take up vertical space, and I can actually physically see that if I want to. So if that is what I want to do, I'm just going to take this button, I'm going to add this over here, make sure there is appropriate spacing on all of the sides, and so a button can either come in vertically on this angle, which I am suspicious about, but I would want to see how that works. So we could either add a button like this, or we could physically change the way right now elements would go, and we can sort of create the space for this to work. So I feel like in order for this button to work, I've rarely seen vertical buttons work, especially with the text and readability issues that come along. So you can make the slider, instead of making it very, very heightened, you can change its width to be sort of very, very wide instead of very, very high, and that would be a good way to present our slider. And then we can change the direction of the text a little bit. So this is going to be my first call to action button, and I feel like for any good UI you need a couple of call to action buttons, so I feel like I'm going to also add a second call to action button. That just seems like a necessary feature right here. So you can obviously change the colors as well. I love to play around with a whole bunch of colors because it just really lets you say that these elements are all very, very different, and you can sort of also use a single color for all elements of a single type. So for example, if I want to use orange for call to action buttons, grouping things of similar colors without being too committed with the fonts and sizes and images becomes really, really easy. And so now I'm just going to add this right here. This text can be changed in the way it's aligned. I feel like we could do either sort of a half alignment and then only add one single button, or we could just layer two buttons on top of each other like this and then sort of let this text take the remaining space. But I feel like you could also maybe widen this a little bit, shift the title up a little bit, not leave a lot of empty white space, and just try to work with all of the different layout variations that would be required over here. So you get the point. And now when I'm ready to work with this actual UI, I can just select this whole thing, press Ctrl G, and that would create one single group for me. Go to the menu bar and you can export this as an image or save it by a couple of different options. So you can save it to your physical disk, share this as a shareable link, but this will be an Excalidraw file only, or you can save this in your workspace of Excalidraw Plus. But I feel like for this use case, I need a couple of images, so I'm just going to save it as either a PNG or SVG. I would like to work with SVGs because you can change the colors of SVGs in Figma as well long after you've exported this. So changing the colors was simple in Excalidraw, and that was one of the reasons I started using Excalidraw. And so when I export my image as an SVG, I can change the colors in Figma as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. I could go with PNG because the advantage of PNG and SVG for that matter is you can have a background that is transparent and still have that work. That's not the case with JPEGs, but that's the advantage of PNGs. You can copy this this entire thing to the clipboard, and that would work with softwares like Excalidraw, where you have these canvases where you can play around with the different visual elements. You can do a couple of settings for exporting this image, so you can export only the selected elements. This would be a big matter if we had other elements over here which we did not want to select and export. So this is for only selecting a couple of elements and selectively exporting them. You can also choose to enable or disable the background, and this would be important if our white background had been set to transparent. So if we had background enabled, only then would we get a white background, otherwise we would get a transparent background. But since I chose white in the beginning of this video, that is why I just want to have the background all white and all present. You can also work with a dark mode variation, so this automatically lets you change your Excalidraw wireframe into a dark mode version of itself, and so you're very easily able to visualize what your entire UI would look like as a dark mode UI, and that's just super duper effective. You can export this dark mode version, and that gives you a lot of insight into the way things would work in dark mode variations as well in the future. You can embed this scene, but that takes a lot of space of the exported file size, and it's saved into exported PNG and SVG datas so that it can be restored from the PNG and SVG files later on. You can scale your UI up to about 3 times its actual width and height in terms of the real size, and then you can save your image. So I'm just going to save it as an SVG inside of my desktop, and then you can work with your entire UI wherever you want. So you can now just take this to Figma and start to add elements. So now you can take this entire thing to Figma and then add an image where there is an image, add a title where there is a title, add description text where there is description text, and add buttons, add slider elements, add navigation bars wherever these elements are present. And now when you have this very, very clear guideline with a wireframe of where things are supposed to go, you won't struggle with positioning and layouts that much. In Figma, the only job you have left now is where do I place my fonts? What size are these fonts going to be so that they fit? What colors do we need to group these groups together as? So we're just trying to work with the UI elements in Figma now, and that's the only job that's remaining. You won't struggle with should I place buttons vertically or horizontally, should I make the slider elements thinner, thicker, what do I do, and these questions of very, very basic layout positionings that increase time while designing UIs in Figma reduces so much. So that was your very first wireframe created inside of Excalidraw.